The decision wasn't made over a morning coffee. For me, calling a therapist was an act of quiet desperation. I sat in my car, engine off. The silence inside louder than the city traffic outside. The phone felt heavy in my hand. Each digit I dialed was a surrender to a feeling I could no longer carry alone. I had tried everything else, longer hours, the gym, endless drives, but the hollowness remained. This call was the last resort. I wasn't looking for a quick fix. I was looking for a lifeline.
The world saw a man who had it all together, a steady job, a nice apartment, but behind that facade, Mark was adrift. Loneliness his constant companion, making that phone call felt like tapping on the glass, hoping someone would notice.
The receptionist's voice was cheerful, professional. She scheduled my first appointment. The process was surprisingly simple, almost anticlimactic. I hung up and stared at the dashboard, hope flickering, quickly overshadowed by apprehension. I had just broken an unwritten rule admitting I was not okay.
Now, he just had to get through the week, smile, pretend, keep the secret. The appointment was a fragile hope he guarded closely. He wondered if this was the right thing to do, if anyone would understand, or if, like before, he'd find himself speaking a language no one else seemed to comprehend. The silence in the car returned, heavier than before.
I had finally asked for help, now I just had to show up.
From a young age, boys learn the rules. Be strong, don't cry, handle your own problems. This unspoken code of masculinity is a heavy inheritance. To ask for help is to admit weakness, a violation of the primary directive. Mark carried this pressure into his decision to seek therapy. Men are celebrated for their stoicism, their ability to endure hardship without a crack in their armor. But what happens when the pillar begins to crumble? The very traits that are praised, independence, resilience, become a cage. Seeking therapy feels like a public declaration of failure. Mark had always been the reliable one, the steady hand. But who could he turn to? Admitting his own struggles felt like a betrayal. The fear of judgment kept him silent for years. This conditioning runs so deep that even when a man knows he needs help, the words get stuck in his throat. He believes he should be able to handle it, sees his struggle as a personal failing. That's why so many men wait until a crisis point, until the pain is unbearable. They don't seek help when the problem starts. They seek it when they have no other choice. It's a system that forces men to wait until they are broken before they're allowed to ask for help. Dr. Evans listened, nodding, then smiled. S1, I started to talk about loneliness, disconnection, the constant hum of anxiety. I didn't cry, I just laid out the facts. Narrator, media group, man sitting in softly lit therapist's office, tissues on table, wide shot of cozy therapy room, man speaking calmly, the stock distribute equally. The therapist's office was exactly as he'd imagined, soft lighting, comfortable chairs, tissues on the table. Mark sat on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped tightly. Dr. Evans, kind and gentle, asked what brought him in. Dr. Evans listened, still kind, still professional. S1, I tried to explain further. It wasn't just stress, it was deeper. I described the hollowness as a physical presence. Narrator, media group, man describing feelings to therapist, hands gesturing to chest. Close-up of man's pained expression while talking in therapy, a stock, distribute equally. The words landed like a quiet dismissal. Mark had tried to explain a profound emptiness, and the response was to take a break. S4. Media group. Man looking disappointed as therapist recommends break. Therapist suggesting vacation. Man reacting skeptically, stock a distribute. Equally. It sounds like you're experiencing burnout. Maybe take a vacation? Find a new hobby?
Men often have a hard time adjusting to life's pressures. Let's work on stress management techniques.
I left with more questions than answers. The silence followed me home. Narrator. Media group. Man sitting alone at home in silence. Man staring out window in dimly lit room, deep in thought, stock. Distribute. Equally. She was following a script, a generic playbook that didn't fit what he was feeling. Mark left feeling more alone than when he arrived. He hadn't been met with cruelty, but with a polite misunderstanding. His pain was labeled as stress and filed away. The therapist hadn't seen the depth of the wound because he hadn't presented it in the way she expected. He walked out into the sun feeling foolish, wondering if he was just being dramatic. Maybe a vacation was all he needed after all.
Mark's experience is not unique. Many men finally build up the courage to seek help, only to find their emotional language is not understood.
David, a teacher, told me. I described a constant sense of dread. My therapist told me to exercise more. I was already running 3 times a week.
Ben, a software engineer, said, I told my therapist I felt nothing. He suggested dating apps. I was trying to say I thought I was broken.
This kind of response is invalidating. It reduces a profound struggle to a simple, solvable problem.
I tried to explain the pressure to provide for my family. The therapist kept asking about my childhood. I was talking about right now.
The focus on a therapeutic script can overshadow the present pain a man is trying to articulate. The common thread is a feeling of being unheard. Men are not performing their pain in a way that's easily recognizable. They present distress in a controlled, factual manner. Anger, numbness, purposelessness. When this is met with surface-level advice, it reinforces the belief, my feelings aren't valid. It's a quiet rejection, confirming their deepest fear. No one will understand. The result? Men retreat further into silence. Their pain is not just unseen, it's dismissed. The cycle continues. Male vulnerability often wears a disguise. For many men, it looks like anger, withdrawal, or a sudden obsession with work, a desperate attempt to control chaos. A man might say, I've been feeling a bit off, when he really means, I'm drowning. Therapists and society often aren't fluent in this language. When a man expresses pain through anger, he's labeled aggressive. When he withdraws, he's seen as uncommunicative. We fail to look beneath the surface to see the vulnerability they're trying to protect. This misunderstanding isn't ill will, it's a societal script. To truly help men, we must see beyond the mask. A man who says, I'm fine, might be uttering the biggest lie of his life. The challenge is to create a space where his unique pain is seen, validated, and understood. When a man's vulnerability is met with misunderstanding, the harm is quiet but profound.
Leaving that first session felt like a walk of shame. Not for asking for help, but for thinking my problems were worthy of it.
The therapist's dismissive advice planted a seed of doubt. Was he just making a big deal out of nothing? Was he weak?
Self-doubt pushes you back into isolation. The thought of trying again feels daunting.
It's easier to retreat, to pull the armor back on. The experience teaches men that their vulnerability is a burden. They conclude it's safer to keep it all inside. The cycle of loneliness and emotional suppression grows stronger.
I tried to speak, but no one heard me. So, I learned it's better not to speak at all.
The feeling of being invisible is a heavy burden. When a man's pain isn't acknowledged, he's told his experience doesn't matter. This isn't about blaming therapists, it's a cultural blind spot. We have a narrow definition of suffering, and when a man's pain falls outside it, we don't see it. Instead of blaming men for not opening up, we should ask if we're listening well enough. Better listening means putting aside templates and meeting the person where they are. Ask clarifying questions, validate his language, invite him to explore his experience. This isn't about male-friendly therapy, It's about making all therapy more human-friendly. When we fail, we perpetuate a culture that leaves men isolated. The weight of invisibility is too heavy for anyone to carry alone. Supporting men begins with a shift in perspective. We must train ourselves to recognize subtle signs of distress, ask direct, compassionate questions, even when he seems fine.
In therapy, create radical validation from the first session. Whatever you're feeling is valid. We can take our time. Some men respond better to action-oriented or body-based approaches. Flexibility is key. The goal is to build a bridge to emotion through methods that feel safe. Peer support groups and men's circles can be powerful. Listening beyond the silence means building a world where every man's call for help is heard.
There is transformative power in being truly heard. For every man dismissed, there is another who found someone who listened.
Being heard is the antidote to invisibility. It's confirmation you're not alone or broken.
When a man's vulnerability is met with empathy, it makes him more whole. He learns his strength doesn't depend on silence.
He discovers a new kind of strength, the courage to be vulnerable, the resilience to face challenges with support. The story doesn't have to end with retreat. There's another ending, one where his words land and someone hears the urgency in his voice.
That sounds incredibly difficult. Thank you for telling me. These words can change everything.
This is the promise, a world where no man has to reach a breaking point before asking for help. The path forward isn't complicated. It requires a willingness to listen with compassion and curiosity. Being heard is not a privilege, it's a basic human need, and the first step toward home.